Christian Bengel on the Two Party Podcast, and he is running for District 6, looking to take over that seat from the incumbent. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself and just tell you a little bit about himself.
Hi, Dean. Thank you for inviting me. So I appreciate you having me on here. So Dean has already introduced me. My name is Christian Bengel. I am running for District 6 City Council here in Tulsa. I'm running against the six-year incumbent, Connie Dodson, who's been sitting in that chair for a while. So this would be her fourth term if she is elected, and I've participated in this election simply because I've lived in this district for a long time. I bought my property in 1999, and I've seen the property not increase in value like certain other parts of Tulsa. You can see with the expenditure of monies that the city gains through tax revenues that we're not getting our equal share. Our infrastructure isn't the same. We have the dollars to show that, if every district is getting their equal share, we can say that 11.1% goes to each district, right? Because that equals 99.99% of right. So the problem is that Connie likes to talk about, how she's worked and done all these things, and she likes to take credit for everything. But if there's anything negative, she doesn't want to take credit for it. She wants to blame her constituents. She wants to blame everybody else. But if it's something good, she's right there to step up and say, hey, look what I did for you guys. Look how much better, things are. So I just see that my community isn't getting its fair share of the pie when it comes to the revenues. Now, granted, District 7 is the highest revenue generating district in Tulsa. Nine total. Right. So District 7 is the highest generating revenue generating district within the city of Tulsa. However, that would be around the big areas of business, around 71st area, where all the business are.
So the Woodland Hills area, really.
Exactly. Right. And it kind of joins up to our district at a certain point. Justin Van Kirk, who's running in that district against the incumbent Lori Dector Wright, is one of the candidates that we're supporting, right? Because he is a Christian conservative, just like myself. I'm a Christian conservative. I believe in God first, of course, my family and my country, right? I served in the military as a combat vet. I'm a retired sheriff's deputy from Tulsa County as a reserve. I always want to make that distinction, right? I didn't do it for a living, but I did serve my community for 17 years for free. I don't get any benefits from Tulsa County. I don't get any benefits of any kind, really, other than I still get to carry a badge and a gun, and I have a sheriff's plate on the back of my car. So those are the only benefits I've gotten out.
So that's the only perks.
Absolutely. And I do consider the police my brothers and sisters, right? So I will always defend them. I will always stand behind them. I fly a American flag, a thin blue line flag. I fly my Desert Storm flag, and then, of course, my president's flag, which is President Trump. I do support President Trump. And if Joe Biden gets elected, unfortunately, he will be my president, right? And I can't disagree with that because, I'm not the only voter. If that's what we end up with, we're just going to have to.
We have to learn to respect our leaders.
Right.
As a nation, we need to learn how to just accept who the leader is. We don't have to agree with them, but we definitely need to accept and learn to let them do their term and assist them.
Yeah, I've never agreed with that idea or thought process that this isn't my leader or this isn't my president. Whether you like or dislike that, I didn't necessarily agree with Obama on some of the things that he did, but I never disrespected him, right?
We want to see our leaders succeed, not fail. That's the thing. It benefits all of us.
Right, and the thing is that is a person who actually is running our country, whether we like it or not. We should never disrespect anybody like that, even if we don't agree with their policies and agendas. So. Even if I were to lose, in this primary, just like, we had discussed earlier, if Cheyenne Morgan had gotten elected, you know what, I would have supported her. Right. I may not have agreed with her platforms and some of her ideas, but it would have been her position to lead this district. Right.
And I think it's important to keep in mind, I mean, just because you lose an election to somebody and you disagree with their policy, it doesn't mean you can't step up and encourage that person to have a civil discussion with them on your policies that you were hoping to bring in. And maybe there's some common ground there that both parties can work on together with a winning or losing candidate, and they can actually get their both policies and agendas worked out and ironed out for the community. And that's what the most important thing is, I think.
Right. Absolutely. And, that's kind of my thing is that, even though the three platforms are a little bit different, we're a little bit different. I felt like that people were going to make their choices based upon either emotion or research, right? It's usually going to be one of those two things. Either you're going to make an emotional vote based upon the individual that's running, correct, or, this person is going to look at each one of the candidates before they go to the poll. It's usually going to be up to that person to decide how they're going to cast their vote. I think the biggest problem, though, for me, and I think we discussed this previously, is that people aren't exercising their right to vote. When you look at the mayoral race and things of that nature, you can tell when you have a population of over 400,000 people and only, 30% or 20% are getting out to vote. That's a problem. I mean, yeah, but you can look on social media and determine that, people are not happy with the leadership. They gripe and they complain and they say this and that. But then when they have the opportunity to make a change, they kind of just are indifferent, right?
And it's interesting because you have people that believe that both candidates are no good. I'm not going to go vote because this candidate's not on my side or sees my way, and this candidate is not my party. And some people vote on party lines, some people don't. And then you have people that are like, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils in an election. And so you do have a lot of people that don't turn out. You do have a lot of people that, can't get a ride to the polls. A lot of people talk about, well, the mail-in, we should push more mail-in. And, I'm not against the absentee. I think that's a great idea if you can do that. But maybe it is time. Maybe we're at a day and age in technology that maybe it is a time that we need to look at a different outlook or a way that's not... That's a better approach to helping get people to the polls, get them to vote, but also help get the issues out there for people to look at. I know here in Tulsa we have a lot of homeless, and you look at both sides of the aisle, and we have you have a president, you have a leader. I don't think the administration is always the problem, and that could be in a local setting as well. The mayor may not be the problem. But you do have a problem when it comes to your legislative side of things, and as well as sometimes your city council. So you can have a two-party system, and both people aren't getting along, and they're not willing to allocate funds for people, as we see nationally right now with the COVID situation. You got families that are put out and don't have money to make ends meet, and here we've got Congress just kind of sitting on their hands. Neither one wanting to budge, and really they're sitting in those seats because the people put them there to do this work and to pass these things for the people. And I feel they'd really do a disservice, and I feel like both parties are kind of giving us a fail, just showing that they're a failure for us instead of showing that they're for the people. But I know here in Tulsa, just locally, I mean, we've got a lot of issues here that with COVID going on, money should be reallocated for different things. I agree that the development needs to occur, and we shouldn't have stagnant job sites sitting around. But let's be real. It's probably time we look at reallocating some funds to the people and take it out of maybe where some other money was earmarked for something else. Just kind of makes a little sense. We've got a big homeless problem. There's, some people want to be there's people I know that just want to be out there, and they're okay with being homeless. It's kind of just their thing, being off the grid. And then there's a lot of people that it's not by choice. They maybe have a mental health issue, or maybe they just can't make ends meet, can't hold a job, don't have career skills, can't seem to get hired due to felonies and stuff like that. So there's a lot of issues that we could address as far as the homeless situation goes. And so that's something maybe we should touch on too. I know you have an opinion about that.
Well, and I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of people have is when we're talking about monies and the expenditure of public funds. Just like yesterday on one of the on the council call, there is a group who is tasked with determining the projects that the CARES funding is supposed to be spent on. So, what some of these things that they're talking about spending these money on are great ideas. One of them was the homeless, right? And we talked about this before. You know, the homeless is an issue. The homeless are an issue, right? I made this statement during a town hall forum, right? And I wasn't the only one who made this statement, but, you know, being a candidate, I got chastised for what I said, right? And I want to make some clarity, and I want to say this again. Not everyone is homeless by choice. There are some people who are homeless by choice because, again, it gives them the freedom to move about and come and go as they please and do those things. They're not tied to the grid, right? Whether people want to believe that's really true or not, it's a fact. I know this from having dealt with the homeless.
Some just want to stay on the streets, and there's really not much we can do about, that's freedom.
And I hate that. I don't understand that mentality.
Yeah, some stay homeless due to addiction. Some of them just mental issues, and some people just like that. I'm big on freedom. Some people just like that freedom of being able to do what they want when they want, and that's their choice.
I know. I don't understand that thought process. But here's the other thing. I also gave an example. One of the horrible habits that I picked up in the military was smoking, right? Which is always the breeding ground for learning to smoke, I guess. So, yeah, absolutely. Boredom. Yep. Exactly. And so, I talked about, how some people are affected by drug abuse and how those addictions can grab a hold of a person. And I gave an example of where, I went on a trip with my youngest daughter to Knoxville, Tennessee. And from 4 o'clock in the morning till 10:30 at night, I hadn't had a cigarette, right? And you're talking about somebody who'd smoked for 20, 30 years. That's a huge break for a smoker to not have that nicotine. And, when I did finally have that cigarette, I felt like, I was going to freaking have a heart attack. And my daughter, it was like 10 years old to stand there. She's like, "Dad, are you okay?" I'm like sweating and shaking. And, I kind of tried to give a personal understanding that I do understand that addiction. And those are the people that we need to figure out how to help. And I also said there is a utopian fix. Whether people want to believe it or not, there is a utopian fix to the homeless issue, right? And I like talking about this simply because, to me, I work downtown at City Hall, right? I actually work for a company called CenturyLink, and I'm in the same building. I've seen people across the street on a corner literally take sandwiches out of the trash can on the corner and eat them. And let me tell you something. We all break our necks getting over there to that person to say, "Hey, if you're hungry, hey, there's a Chinese place here next door. I'll buy you some food," or whatever. That person is genuinely hungry, and those are the people that you want to help. But you do have people that you don't know how to help, but there is a utopian fix. If we took all of the resources that all of these charities have, whose goal is supposedly to help the homeless, and we combine those resources, right? And we took those resources, absolutely. But the problem is, I find a lot of times is that people are so worried about getting credit, right? It's not, a lot of times I feel like sometimes people aren't necessarily about the mission or about the goal. It's about whether I'm going to get credit, right? And to me, if we genuinely wanted to resolve that issue, in the same way that we built a $10 million health clinic on Union School property, why couldn't we do the same thing for our homeless? Create a centralized location so that we could create a centralized location for professionals who are out here trying to help the homeless with addictions or any type of services, jobs, anything to centrally locate these folks, feed. I mean, that's why I said I get a little frustrated because I feel like there's a fix, but do we really want the fix, right?
You make a good point. There's a lot of people out there that unfortunately, due to their addiction, they don't want the fix. And do we allocate money for that? Do we put money aside to build something that potentially could fail or just cost the taxpayers money because it just sits there, or it only helps those that really want the help, but maybe not those that actually need the help, or does it get taken advantage of in some aspect along the way? So it could be a burden for taxpayers. It's a hard subject when it comes to the homeless, and it always has been in our nation, whether it's local, state, or just across the nation or world. Homeless is just a huge issue. It's a huge issue for politicians. It's a huge issue in election years. But at the end of the day, coming from a good heart, you just you got to look out for people. It's kind of what we should be doing. And I'm that guy. I will absolutely go, and I will see the guy on the corner, and if it's on my heart to give that guy $1, I'm that guy. I fall for it. I don't care if that guy goes and he drinks it away. I don't care if he goes drugs it away. That is his choice with that money. As soon as it leaves my hand and it has the blessing to go to that person from me, that's it. It's between God and them at that point. And I pray that dollar goes to the best effort and helping that person get off the streets. But we know a lot of times it doesn't occur like that. It occurs where that person's probably going to go use maybe, or just kind of swindle that money away into the bottle and just drink it up. And unfortunately, that's sad, but that's out of our control. I can't dictate what somebody's going to do with my money, just like we can't always expect the leaders to do good with our tax money.
Yeah, I'll disagree with you there, Dean.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't going to hand $1 off to somebody because they know that they're not going to use it properly. And again, that's each individual has that choice to give or not to give. But again, that's just where I stand.
Gotcha. Right. But here's the problem with that.
So I've had a friend many years ago. This is back in the 90s. He was a doctor down in Miami, Florida. And he used to pay about $10 an hour or so for people to go out on the corner and panhandle. And of course, he'd have some that would get the money and run, or just turn in what they turned in. But this guy was making several $100,000. I know he made $100,000 a year. One year he was bragging about, and I think on his peak that he was doing, he had a bunch of people. They had vans dropping people off doing this, and they'd drop them off at all the major intersections, and they would collect money from people and panhandle. And that became a big issue in Florida, and they started kind of running them off and making laws against the panhandling and stuff. But that guy, he was a doctor, had plenty of money, had a great job and career, and just made plenty of money. And that was just one of his little side things he did. He just he would pay people to go stand on the corner, hold a sign, collect change, paid them $10 an hour off the books. That guy was made his money tax-free, 6 digits a year. And as crazy as it sounds, and we know that there's a lot of, you got drug dealers that are, somebody needs a fix, and the drug dealer puts them on the corner, or they owe the drug dealer, and the drug dealer, you can get beat up or killed, or you can go stand on the street corner and get my money. And that's a very real situation that we live in our society. It's a very scary situation, and unfortunately, that's the way the world turns in those circles. It's sad, but I do know, like I said, it's fraud. It's very corrupt to do something like that and to use somebody for that. But there's people that'll do it. There's people that'll do it. They don't mind doing it. There's people that'll go stand on that street corner strictly because they are an addict and they need their fix, and that's the only way they know to get a couple bucks, because they know they're not going to get employment. They know they're not going to go into a job dirty or using or coming down off of something. They know they're not going to get hired and be able to hold a job. So there is people that will go stand on the corner and do that. And do I agree with it? Not necessarily. I think there's a better way for everybody, and I think we should always try to encourage a better way. But it's out there that this is happening. It's a very real thing, and I like to believe this. I lost touch with this guy many years ago, but I like to believe he's still a doctor, and I like to believe maybe he's not doing that stuff anymore. Maybe he changed his ways and took a better path.
Right. And I get what you're saying, but again, because you don't know what the situation is, right? Like I said, if it's really an issue within the district or within the city itself, right? We know that we do have those people out there that are collecting money for like you said, that are fraudulently posing as being homeless or paying people to stand on the corner. And you do have people that, we here in the city have caught, that's what they're doing. That's how they're making their living. They'll get in their car, go over to Chick-fil-A. I think that even happened in Bixby. Somebody got caught.
There always seems to be some lady with kids, either at Walmart, or you always see somebody on the side of the road with their kids doing the panhandling.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, when you start bringing children into it, it just becomes despicable anyway.
I would agree. And then you see them bringing children to protests and riots and just panhandling. I mean, it's not a good situation. You don't know what's going to happen. It's just a scary situation.
Right, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's not worth endangering the life of a child just to have them out there to see or witness a civil protest. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the revenues and the equality for some of this revenue for each city and district.
Well, like I said earlier, we were talking about the division of the revenues that the city generates with taxes, because that's the biggest issue. And one of the things that, like we were talking about yesterday, is that, if you're getting your fair share of the pie, everybody should equally get 11.1% of, most everything, right? If we're talking about specific things. Now, granted, there are going to be projects throughout the city where you're doing developments which are going to create new businesses and attractions. The Gathering Place was one of them.
And that's a great thing for the whole community there.
And the thing is you want to feel like that your district is part of that development process, right? You don't want to feel like that your district has become relegated to the bottom of the pile. We'll just do enough to keep it in the means that it is, but we're not going to do anything to create a atmosphere to where businesses are going to be attracted, right? We're never going to be a 71st, and that's not the goal here, right? Because it'll never be that way.
Right, for sure.
We have a lot of good folks here. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of good folks. Everybody here's good for the most part. I mean, we have good neighbors. The crime, during COVID has kind of went down a little bit, so that's a great thing. We just need our fair share. We need to see that the city actually is taking interest in this part of the city and not just kind of leaving it to the woodpile. We see that up north a little bit too, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how our mayor has worked some of these projects, and a lot of people like or dislike Bynum or disagree with some of his policy, but at the end of the day, I think he's done a great job in the north and some of the projects along the river, and I think at the end of the day, I think it's great to see these things happen. The mask mandate's where I kind of disagree with a lot of stuff, and so...
Right. Well, and that kind of leads me into since you brought up the mask mandate, that's kind of one of the other things that motivated me to run was, you can't have people blaming other people for their decisions, right? So when Bynum came out and said on a Friday, I don't remember what day it was, but I know it was a Friday. So I went on the Nextdoor app. I don't know if you've heard that app. So I went out on Nextdoor app being a candidate, and I said, look, I would vote against this mask mandate, right? I flat out said it, right? And I said the reason why I would vote against the mask mandate is because of the 9th Amendment. Right? The 9th Amendment says just because it's not listed as a right in the Constitution doesn't mean it's not still a right. right? So that was the basis of my argument. So to me, we didn't have the right to create that sort of law to take away personal freedoms. I am not against the mask mandate as far as, people wearing their masks, if they have the informed consent. Let me reword this. I am against the mask mandate, period, right? But what I am not against are people who feel, compelled to wear that mask because they feel it makes them safer. I don't shame people, and I'm not against it in that regard where, they are trying to flatten the curve and cut down the number of cases in that regard. I'm just against the law or the law itself, right? They try and say, well, it's not criminalizing it. Well, yeah, it is, right? By creating the law, So by creating the law in and of itself, it was unconstitutional to start with, number one. By indicating you're trying to split hairs by saying we're not criminalizing it, well, yeah, you are. Because basically by creating a law in and of itself, right, you're basically saying it's a law, right?
Well, to give law enforcement the right to stop, detain, and question you for wearing or not wearing a mask, to me, sounds like a law. So legitimately, yeah, it sounds like that we'd be enforcing a law.
We were talking about, the AIDS epidemic, the flu, all these different diseases and viruses that have been out there, right? And we haven't made such a huge deal over them where the death rates are significantly higher, right? So the problem is what I kind of feel like, even looking on social media, you start seeing these advertisers selling these different types of masks, right? So you're like, is somebody trying to create the illusion that we're now going to have to wear masks for the rest of our lives? I mean, it's a ridiculous concept.
It is ridiculous. And then you think of, I know we live in a free market and everyone wants to make some money, but, you've got people profiting from this, not just using it as a political weapon, but actually profiting off of selling the masks and shirts and stickers. You name it, somebody's going to profit off it in this world. But it's just scary to see that it's become a for-profit situation with this virus versus, the real health care and help that could be out there for us.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the counselor who's in there now here in District 6, what she did is she took a secret telephonic poll, right? And I told you about this. She took like some sort of secret poll and called the specific people, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know how she did the poll, but I didn't get a call. Other people that I know didn't get a call. So supposedly she created this poll, this telephonic poll, and she supposedly got a determination from the constituents that they were against the mask mandate. Now, her number, if I remember correctly, was 74%. 74% of her constituents were against the mask. But then she turns around after the vote and speaks to Brian Dorman. I'm going to throw names. Brian Dorman from Channel 6 evidently spoke to her and called her and asked her about it. And she said, well, I was for the mask mandate. My constituents were against it. Right. So like I said, the obvious here is that we totally contrast in our values in that when Biden announced that he was going to seek a mask mandate, I went out straight out and said, look, I would vote against this, and here's the reason why, right? And when I was going through this process, this vetting process through these PACs like the regional chamber, the guy who was leading the call, this guy, I guess he thought it was going to be a debate at the end because that was one of the questions was a mask mandate. And he said, well, I have the right for you not to spit on my food, right? And I thought to myself, I'm like, what a curious thing to say, right? So if that one statement right there, then you're kind of implying that if I just don't have the right to spit on your food today because of the COVID virus, what do you think has been happening in the entire life that you've been living without a mask?
So the OIM.
So the OIM, right, you obviously are aware of that. So here's the funny part. So the FOP doesn't endorse me. So even being a retired reserve deputy, the FOP does not support me. And the reason why, I hate it was an embarrassment to me, to be honest with you. I was a little upset about it. And as we got along in this race, I kind of just let it go. But then, when it got posted on Facebook, that they were endorsing her, it kind of brought a little anger back to me again, because I was like, you know what, these guys aren't even supporting me, but supposedly they gave her an award in 2019 for quote unquote sticking her neck out for them, right? So I've been in a little battle over that issue. I think the FOP one was probably the one that kind of hurt the worst, simply because, I've done that job, I've been out there and I see what these guys go through. So the fact that obviously I would support our police, right, on every level.
Right.
Correct. So the OIM, when it came about, of course, Biden brought that over as an idea from Denver, right? And the issue is that, when you start creating oversight committees that, don't have that knowledge and understanding. I mean, it's just like when we sit here and we look at things that we see on Facebook, like we'll see a video where the issue's already in progress, right? We don't get it straight from the start up to the end. We get it right, like in the middle, right? We're getting half the information, and this has always been my issue. Is that a lot of times people are making decisions based off half the information, right? And that's what creates a lot of the issues in our community. Of course, we create these ideas and these biases based upon half information that someone has given us. And what Connie did was she voted against the OIM, which I would expect anyone to do who supports our law enforcement, right? Unless you can find a legitimate reason. I'm sorry, I don't have the data to show me, other than proof of someone's claim that our officers are racially charged, right? That they go out and they target specific races or specific genders, or pick your idea. As a matter of fact, the police chief, Wendell Franklin, presented a study.
How do you feel about him?
I love him. I think he's done a great job. And let me tell you something.
I feel he did a great job being very transparent about them not having a plan when those protests in Woodland Hills was going on. And I really think since he's jumped into the middle of this and kind of over his head, I think he did great.
Yeah, he's great. I think he's done an excellent job. And, this poor guy, when Chuck Jordan retired in February, this poor guy didn't even have time to even enjoy the fact that he got promoted, got the job. And here he is, he got thrown right into the fire, with all this pandemic stuff. And he has, and he's been good for the community. I think he's done a great job. And to me, to even insinuate that we would have an OIM that would kind of hamstring him without him being able to look at the different things that he wants to implement to change the trust and the view of the police department. And the study that I was talking about was a 2-year study that he presented to the council, right? That, this was an independent study that showed that there was no evidence of bias within the police department, right? And for people to still dismiss this coming from, and I hate using this word, a black man who is our police chief, right? It shouldn't matter that he's black, but the fact that he's saying that and he believes this report and he's presenting it as fact, right? But you're still dismissive of it, right? Or implying that it's almost illegitimate, as if it was illegitimate. I was a little unhappy about it, that people still felt that way. I'm not saying that people don't have individual issues, where they feel like, the officer behaved in such a way that made them feel racially targeted or something of that nature. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it does happen.
I think we have Tulsa has a great department, and I think it's hard to it's hard to pin racial, whatever the situation may be racially in a police department, or that they're targeting certain culture. Honestly, I think if you're looking at the bright side of things here, I guess, if you're a criminal, you're a criminal, okay? It doesn't matter who you're targeting. Now, is there bad officers out there? I'm sure. There's bad human beings. Nobody's perfect. Is any police department perfect? Absolutely not. Can we expect our department to get better and look at different procedures? Sure, why not? I mean, that just makes sense that we try to improve our departments. So, I don't know.
Right. And so, that's kind of the thing is that, he never said or even implied, and I don't even think Chuck Jordan, even said or implied that Tulsa police were perfect. In fact, they're going to start changing the reporting on their use of force, right? So things that they didn't have to report for use of force, now they're going to have to report, right? So like if they have to force you into being handcuffed, they're going to now have to report that, right? If they're also going to make some changes in the collection of data, right? So they can have that data to better understand, what exactly is going on in the policing itself. So the thing is I think the Tulsa police are open to that transparency, that they want to do what they're supposed to, right?
Is it safe to say that every department, or at least for Tulsa, they're always looking to review and look at different procedural changes and make it better within the department? And I like to believe that. I like to think that we're doing enough, and always we could do more. But is it safe to say that they're definitely working on procedures and making it better daily before all this?
Yeah, I mean, you do have policies and procedures, right, that constantly get updated. Now, I think because of, some of the incidences that have occurred in recent times, it forces departments who have kind of become complacent about it, right? Until there's an issue, you really don't know that there's a problem, right? Or there's an issue with the policies that you have in place. And once an issue does come up and how you what your perceived policies and procedures are, of course the community is going to look at them one way, but the police department is going to look at them from another direction. So it's like I said, until you have these types of incidences, you kind of become complacent about what it is that you're doing. If things are working, why would you need to change them, right?
Right. If there's a disturbance and you just go and you make an arrest and get them to jail and everything works out safely and the disturbance is handled, hey, we did a great job. Why look at anything else? The job got done.
Right. Now, if the chief, let's just say the chief was, a bad guy, we'll just say, and he didn't think there was anything with the culture, but you still had the community complaining, saying, look, we're being racially targeted. These guys are doing this stuff. They're arresting us for, dumb stuff that they wouldn't arrest other people for. Right. Then if that's a culture issue, that would be a culture issue. Right. You would have to look at that from a culture issue, and obviously that the chief wouldn't be the right person, and the mayor has the authority to hire and fire the chief, right? It doesn't go through the council. The chief has the authority to do that. So like I said, I think Chief Franklin has done a great job, and to even pose the idea of having an OIM is hamstringing him. And I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to support our law enforcement until they do something that, just goes way out of bounds.
And then at that point, you would, as a citizen, I would assume you'd reach out to the state and try to open up a state investigation to look into whether there's targeting or whether these arrests are justified arrests, or the procedures and policies of the department are being followed correctly, so that citizens aren't being targeted and arrested for petty things or things that don't fall under really the time to prosecute, really. So yeah, I think at that point, as a citizen, you kind of got to follow. Our justice system isn't perfect, but you still have to follow the procedures of if your community is being targeted by apparently some bad officers or something, or a bad department, the best step to do is to go above that and get your state involved, get an investigation started into reviewing these procedures or these officers in this department. And I think that's probably where a lot of people, don't have faith in the justice system, and they don't really do that all the time, and you just get the bad press.
Well, I would hope that would never happen.
And like I mentioned earlier, the Chiefs came out when they had the protest going on at Woodland Hills there near the mall, and he was very adamant in his press release. He opened up and said, "Hey, we didn't have a plan. The rioters got out of hand, started doing property damage. We called the National Guard in. National Guard, I kind of watched it live on TV, and when the National Guard came in there, they started really getting a handle on it. They started at one end of 71st, and from what I understand, all the way up until I believe it was up until about 3 a.m., they've kind of pushed all the protests and the people that were causing the problems all the way down 71st, kind of got them in an area that was, I guess, where they really could do a lot of damage, but they kind of had them in a point where they had them flanked and could kind of work on getting the issue resolved. And I think it was right around 3 a.m. that they started really dispersing and getting out of there. But I love having a police chief who's completely transparent and even in situations like that where he's willing to open up to the public and say, look, we didn't have a plan. Our best decision right then was to bring in the National Guard. We had no way of keeping these people under control. They kept moving in a way that we didn't have enough officers on the ground at that time. We weren't expecting it. These protests, they get out of hand, and you can't always, you got to take the good with the bad, I guess, as an officer on the ground there, because you really don't know who the good protester is, who the bad protester is. The troublemakers are there, and they're not being held accountable or can't be held accountable at that moment. And for an officer to just officers to come in and just breach a crowd trying to find one guy, it's not really a safe situation for anybody involved. And I think he did the right thing. I love the transparency. I love so far what I'm seeing with this guy as our chief, and I'm hoping to continue to see some of the great things he does with the department, and hopefully can move it in the right direction once we get past all these crazy things in the media right now and these protests and stuff. So
absolutely. And when you made the point that, the chief came out and said, well, we didn't have a plan, and he had to call out the National Guard, right? That was probably the only mistake that I really saw, was that, and I kind of got the idea, when they were kind of giving them the freedom to move. Right. And that was the problem, is they were allowing the protest, even though it was peaceful to start out with. Right. It ended up becoming to where they start busting out windows and tearing up property. The issue is that they allowed them to be fluid. Right. That was a huge problem for me. So if you're going to have these peaceful protests, right, which no one should ever keep someone from exhibiting their First Amendment rights, right? We should never prohibit people from doing that. But we also need to understand that once a crime is committed, it then becomes an illegal assembly.
I agree. Once you're damaging businesses and you're creating turmoil within the community, you've kind of overstepped the boundaries of a peaceful protest and what most states would pull a permit. What you're doing when you're pulling a permit to do a protest and get your message across, I think you're taking away from that message and really doing a disservice to the people following you by allowing people in your crowd to do that damage and just in any way, shape, or form ruining a community that you're trying to speak into and get following to support a movement. So those people that are doing that in those crowds are really, obviously not there to help.
Yeah, you're talking about opportunists.
Yeah, and if I was running a movement and I really wanted to get my message across, I think I would hold the people that I'm with accountable, and people that are going to be insurrected and try to step into my movement and cause problems or disruptions like that. As part of the crowd, I would immediately be one to oust them or find a way to separate myself and my crowd from them.
And not let somebody come in and screw up our message.
Well, of course, you want your message to get across. I mean, that's the whole point of your protest and using your voice to speak. And you get people in these crowds that are not part of these crowds. They just see a moment to go loot or riot or whatever it is they're into to disrupt, to disorganize, cause problems really. And you don't want your message to be polluted. You don't want to be affiliated with these people, and sometimes that can bring the wrong energy to a crowd, where you could have an actual peaceful protest, and these rioting and looting starts off, and the energy of the crowd being peaceful turns to a few people that decide to jump on board with the rioting and the looting, and like, hey, well, if they're doing it, we'll do it, we'll get away with it. So unfortunately, it pollutes the message, it pollutes the crowd you're trying to gather, and it really just deflates your whole issue and your topic. You're not going to be able to get people on board. Law-abiding citizens are not going to jump on board with crime and destruction. It's just not good for the environment and the community.
When you're talking about like Kyle Rittenhouse or Ritterhouse, I don't even remember what his last name is, but the whole George Floyd thing, when you're talking about these incidents, right, I'm the type of person who reserves judgment, right? And the reason why is because there's things that I don't know, don't have access to. There are all kinds of things that, that's the problem to me with a lot of society now, is we want to make spot judgments on only partial information, right? Yeah. So, when it comes to those sorts of things, I don't make any judgment calls because I don't know all the information. I don't know the circumstances. I don't know what caused the issue. And so I don't want to judge people on those simple things, because I know, just like we were talking about just earlier here, when you only get part of the video, right, but you're making a judgment based on halfway through the incident, right? We don't know what happened, and I don't want to make those judgments against people, because I'm afraid that, you're going to come out on the wrong side of it, because you already had a preconceived notion that, based on the one piece of information. I have had some people come out against me, because of certain things about my life, right? So being a Christian, I did have a anti-gay flag on as my profile pic. Okay. So that was in 2015. Now, if people did their research, like we were just talking about, they would know that in 2015, the Supreme Court was deciding the gay marriage issue at that time. Right. And I wrote an explanation as to why I had that posted as my profile pic, so there would be no misunderstanding. As a Christian, right, I believe in the institution of marriage between man and woman, right, because they can procreate children and have a family unit. Now, I wasn't against the LGBTQ community legally, because I clearly stated that they still had the same equal rights within our country. I felt that the marriage issue was kind of stepping on a Christian issue, right? That was from my Christian point of view. But I still believe that they have equality within our country under our legal system. So I don't care if what you identify as a person, you as a human being and a citizen in this country have the same equal rights that everybody else has.
As a Christian, I'm going to love somebody no matter who they are, as long as they're not infringing on my life. So,
right. Yeah, and that's kind of the issue is that, people kind of took off and ran with that and said, oh, well, he's anti-LGBTQ. Well, from a Christian standpoint, I have my own beliefs, right, which I'm entitled to as an individual. Right. But in the country, as a human being and a citizen in this country, you have the same equal rights that I do. I don't have the right to go out and oppress you or shame you or harass you in any way, shape, or form about your life.
Yeah, I feel that we all have the same rights, and depending on your cultural background, how you feel about it. But some people may feel restricted more than others as far as the way the world is or their life. But at the end of the day, I feel that this country, we have the freedoms to have what we want, and so I feel we are equal even by law. So some people may disagree with that.
Right. And I, quite frankly, to me, I don't worry about what somebody else is getting or not getting. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. Luckily, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but luckily, I just don't have that kind of control and I don't have that visibility. So it obviously is an issue. But, unfortunately, I'm not in a position other than to say, yeah, I do support the fact that women who do the same job don't get paid the same thing, right? But by the same token, I don't have those conversations. If I'm the person deciding that pay structure, I'm not the person that has that conversation with that other person to determine exactly what issues they may have. Because again, this goes back to, I may not have all the information, right?
It's definitely important that we have all the info and be able to put things together with the right information and facts. I guess mainly facts is what we want. So, that's key. People misunderstand things very easily.
So I definitely wanted to bring out that issue because I wanted to clarify, because I hate that people would think that I'm a bigoted or racist person, because I'm not. Right. And there's a couple more things that I kind of wanted to bring up. So one of the other issues against me is, you've heard of Bob Bates? Okay, so Bob Bates accidentally shot Eric Harris in the process of being arrested, right? He was evidently selling illegal weapons, right? During a sting, Bob Bates accidentally shot this guy and killed him, thinking that he had pulled his taser. That's, the story. So what happened was there was an investigation done into the reserve program. So what happened is that, of course, all of the reserves transformed into all of the reserves in the sheriff's office getting scrutinized, right? So I started looking at training records, qualifications, and things of that nature. What happened is when they started scrutinizing these records, they determined, that certain records were missing for certain years for certain people, right? So, of course, I had a couple of things that were missing, like mental health training, and I think something else. I can't remember. It was only a couple of things, so it was very minor, and I've never skipped the training. I've always been up to date with the training. However, the records were missing. We've got all the records were straightened out. I was still a reserve. I was fully qualified by CLEAT. So there was no issue with that, but somebody, I guess, decided they would bring that out as some sort of issue. I've had people say, oh, well, you only served a couple of years. No, I served from July of 1999 all the way till May of 2016 when the County Board of Commissioners approved my retirement. I didn't do it under guise of failure of anything. I didn't do it under, some pretense that, I was trying to avoid something, because, again, anybody can check with the sheriff's office and find out whether I'm what I say I am. And so the thing is, again, this is where we come back to people who create false narratives with only partial truths, right? So if I create a partial truth, then that must be the truth. I create screenshots of, well, it says you were deficient online. Yeah, I was, because they didn't have the records. So when you provide those records, or those records get updated, you're like, okay, I'm in full compliance, because, again, I'm still certified under CLEAT. Right? I have a commission card signed by the sheriff, right, of Tulsa County. I have a gun and a badge. I'm allowed to carry these things. So if I wasn't what I said I was, the sheriff or someone, I had to go through the same scrutiny that everybody else did. Right? So I'm not afraid of what somebody's going to find on the internet, because, again, these two things are, when you create false narratives against people, right, it's only because you're being emotional. You're not taking all the facts and creating the correct narrative. And so, the thing is, I've had even people question me about that, and say, well, these people are out here saying that, you only did it a couple years, or you resigned, or, you got let go, or stuff like that. Nope. I carry a card, I carry a badge, I carry a gun, and I have a sheriff's tag on the back of my car.
Well, it's nice to know they got to the bottom of all that and resolved the issues with that.
So, that whole Bob Bates thing really put all of us in scrutiny. And I want people to also understand this. Because of that Bob Bates issue, there were people that served, and this is, had I not been in this organization, I would have never believed this. But you had people that had served 40, 50 years as a reserve that were serving their community for that long, right? Now, because what happened, right, when Sheriff Regalado, and I support Sheriff Regalado, he's a good sheriff. The issue is that when he got elected, he had a meeting with all of us and said, basically from this point forward, certain things were going to change. Right. And, if you'd been doing in Stanley Glanz's sheriff's office, right, the idea that there was corruption amongst, the office is a ridiculous thought anyway, in and of itself. But because it's now Sheriff Regalado's office, you've been under Sheriff Glanz for so many years. This is the way things were. You were allowed to do certain things. But now this sheriff is now under the pressures of, fixing a problem, a perceived problem, right? A perceived problem. So the issue is that I thought, and a lot of us who served under Stanley Glanz for such a long time decided, what, we should probably retire and let new people come in. So you do have some guys who even served under Stanley Glanz that are really good reserves and representatives of our community that are still doing it. The thing is they're just younger guys who hadn't been doing it as long, and so they're still there serving, and they're really good deputies.
And I know the Betty Shelby incident as well was a big issue that was going on for a while.
Right. And we had the Betty Shelby incident, which happened here in Tulsa, right? I have my own opinions, but again, they're my own opinions, right? Now, supposedly she became a deputy over, I don't know if it was a reserve or a full-time deputy in another county. Supposedly she's become some sort of trainer. And so, people are upset about that as well.
I don't see that as a big issue myself, really.
And that's here's the bad part about life itself when it comes to our legal system, right? So of course you have civil law and you have criminal law, right? Yeah, so with the legals or with the criminal system, you have to prove, right, evidence, right? Whereas with civil law, it's a preponderance of truth, right? So it's whoever has the best story or whoever's most likely telling the truth, right? So the issue is that even though you can be found not guilty criminally, you can still be held liable legally in a civil court, right? So that's the problem. It's kind of in my own mind sometimes I feel like it's kind of a double jeopardy. Even though I'm not found guilty over here, I could still be found guilty over here. Right. So I could still end up being, financially drained for the rest of my life. O.J. Simpson is a perfect example, right? Even though he was acquitted of the crimes, we all have our own opinions of that, but he's still in debt to the Goldman family for $33 million, right? And they're getting him.
So what was the tally on the votes this past runoff election? How did you do? How did your opponents do? What was the tallies on all of that?
I think I got somewhere around 1,500. Connie got 2,100, and like I said before, Cheyenne got 942, I think. So it wasn't as distanced as what some people expected. And like I said, the thing is I'm glad, that, people did have a choice, and that's exactly how it's supposed to work. My job is to try and unseat that incumbent, just like the other person, just like Cheyenne when she ran her campaign. We have a person who's entrenched in this for 6 years and trying to, go for another term. It's our job to show where, this person is not doing what they're supposed to for us. So, I commend her for running a campaign.
So is it difficult to run a campaign with COVID going on right now? I would see that as being a real damper on knocking on doors.
Yeah, the bad part is because of how large this district is, COVID has really done us in. Let me tell you, some people can become pretty belligerent when you go knock on their door. They come out the door and, like you back off, or telling you to get on the grass, and you're like, okay. I supported Ken Reddick during his campaign for mayor. I supported Casey Robinson, Chad Ferguson, Justin Van Kirk, Kaz Failer, of course. Over in District 5. So, I'm supporting all the conservatives who are running. Ty Walker, we talk about conservative candidates. I was so upset because the conservatives didn't turn out. Even Ty Walker, right? He didn't get the same kind of media attention that Greg Robinson did, right? So I didn't understand the disparity there, and it had to have been just simply because he was a conservative, right? But Ty Walker has a business on Greenwood, right? Wanda J's Next Generation, I think is what it's called. So, we as conservatives have a hard battle. We're always behind the 8 ball here in this society right now. So, my website is www.bengel4tulsa.com, and 4 is FOR. So bengel4tulsa.com. I have a Facebook page, Christian Bengel for Tulsa. So I have that Facebook page, and if you have something that you want to ask me specifically, I think I've covered all the controversial issues that are out there supposedly about me, which are false. But you can call me directly at 918-638-9855. That is my personal cell phone number. Don't call me at 4:30 in the morning, and let me tell you that I do have people doing it. You know what? It's ridiculous.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the show, and thank you for all your insight on the issues you want to handle. And I wish you the best of luck, and I really hope that this election works out for you. I look forward to seeing some changes you can make, and some of the changes you can make in the community, win or lose. And I thank you for being here, and we'll have this discussion later, maybe after the election.
Thank you, Dean. I really appreciate you inviting me and taking the time with me.